Well, hello, everyone.
We didn't get the message on sunglasses.
Oh, we did. We did.
I always follow Diana. It's a good.
We're on
it's
a different thread. We're on a different thread.
You guys are ballers. But it is my absolute pleasure to sit here and spend some time chatting with you guys. First up, 70 years after Cortina
I
hosted.
thought you were going to say I was 70. We were going to have a problem early on.
Oh, God, do you think I look 70?
No.
Okay, thank
I
goodness.
thought you thought I did.
No!
It's going to be embarrassing if we wrestled in front of all these people.
So, 70 years after Cortina hosted the Olympics, it's back, this time as a dual event. And we know from all the records so far, pacing has been fantastic. So we want to hear a little bit about what's driving the demand.
Well, thank you. It's exciting that we just announced today that the Winter Olympics are sold out, which is a great. Appreciate it. If you could clap louder so my bosses could hear it, that'd be great. Thank you. But it also sets us up extremely well for LA 28, which will be upcoming. But it's interesting. What has really moved the needle is the ability to bring in smaller advertisers, because when you just had broadcast TV, not every advertiser can afford, $1 million unit rate, although it's a great value at $1 million. It is, but what we've been able to do is democratize access to it with programmatic and digital. So now you have smaller advertisers, and Joe's Pizza at the end of the block can buy programmatically and see their spot in the Olympics, which is a pretty amazing thing. So we're very excited about where we sit right now.
What a fantastic opportunity. That's great. And we know that you're building on all of the innovations that you had in Paris. So which are the ones that you think are going to really be on the foreground, changing storytelling?
We're not dummies. Paris was good, so we're not going to screw it up. We will once again, the nice part is having the same time zone as we had Paris. We have the strategy, we have the formula. You'll have live events during the day. You'll be able to go on and watch Gold Zone. You'll be able to watch Multiview. You'll have all of those different elements. You'll also have Snoop Dogg will be there. Stanley Tucci will give you a little tour of Italy. So we're going to mix the sport as well as the competition piece of it. But we're not idiots. It worked well in Paris. It'll look very similar again as we get into Milan.
Well, we're really excited. Diana, you hold the record for 44 games in the Olympics. So that deserves an applause. So what advice do you have for athletes?
Oh, that's a good question. The Olympics for an athlete, it's the holy grail. It's the biggest stage. And, anyone who plays sports, that can be intimidating in a lot of ways. So I would always tell athletes, run your own race, which sounds a bit cliche, but that's what it is. It's just another event in a lot of ways. It could be daunting when you're at the Olympics. My favorite memory is always when you're going down to opening ceremonies and you're in that tunnel with every single American athlete. And all the hard work, all the days, all the sacrifice, all the passion that they put into their one race, their one game. You have to really rely on the people that got you there, your coaches, your teammates, your family. All those things I would always go back to as a sounding board when I was in the Olympics. And I was lucky enough to be in 6 of them. And every single one had its own challenges. But that first one, I think you really focus on why you're there. And that's to win your event. That's to win your discipline. That's to give it your all. And at the end of the day, the event ends eventually. The Olympics are going to end regardless. So you might as well enjoy it. Take mental snapshots of it all because it goes by fast. And it's just an amazing event.
What great advice from a real pro. Casey, next up.
What about your time in the Olympics, Casey?
I'm just waiting for you to tell people you're going to come back and play in LA for another gold.
That would be nice, but as we both just said, we wouldn't want to rehab as parents.
Fair enough.
And something would definitely break.
So, LA 28, you have been an absolute pioneer, an innovator in terms of the funding model and inviting brands in, and you hit a milestone. You've already raised $2 billion. Woo! So, what do you think? What is driving this interest from brands?
I would say it's a couple things. I think one, and all the credit, and especially in our country, goes to NBC for this. NBC's coverage of Paris reminded people why they love the Olympics. They love the Olympics, but But if you think about the previous Olympics, you had Rio, which was complicated. You had Pyeongchang, Winter Games in a tough market at a tough time. Then you had 2 COVID games. So the games in Paris were really the first global stature, big city, full presentation since London. And think about the 12 years that had happened in those years. And NBC did an incredible job. Innovation, streaming, access, opportunity, coverage, all those things. And so it reminded people why they love the Olympics. And then the second part of that is the U.S. is the most important economic opportunity in sports. And so you take the first Summer Olympic Games in a generation, the energy coming out of Paris, the platform that is LA, and I think what you see is people are really, really excited about the opportunity. The other thing I would say about the Olympics, and not to get into politics, but in a world where we are divided, one of the things that's a result of that is we have no more common culture. Everyone has their own culture they absorb. And sports is one of the last vestiges of common culture, and the Olympics may be the last vestige of universal common culture. And so there's something incredibly powerful, and I think people clearly want and desire that as you see their engagement with the Olympic movement in a general sense.
What a fantastic sentiment. I love that. And that is certainly, as marketers that work with brands, we know that sporting events are still the last thing remaining that people watch live. So the funding model is obviously an amazing innovation. Do you think that affects the feeling or the vibe that you get? Or how do you still keep the spirit of the Olympics?
Well, look, I think it's important, with Mark's leadership, we have an incredible partnership with NBC. It's really, I don't think the story gets told enough. We have, for the first time, maybe in the history of sports, taken the media and the sponsorship assets and sold together and made people understand that those two things work better together. And as partners, we can generate a lot more opportunity for each other and more value for the brands. And so it doesn't get enough credit. The teams have been incredible, and the results speak for themselves. No, look, I think being a private enterprise means we get to do what we do really well, which is put on the greatest show on earth and make sure that when you get to July 14th and 920 days from today, that the stars align for this incredible Olympics and Paralympics in the city that is the city where people come to tell their stories to the world every day. And so, no, we are going to live, breathe, and be everything that is authentically LA, and in many ways, our structure allows us to do more of that.
Love that. And I love that you know that it's 920 days.
Unfortunately.
So now, Mark and Casey, you were both recognized as the top deal makers of 2025. So what do you think? What is the highlight for all of these incredible brands? How have you brought them in? How have you secured them?
Well, the top deal makers, that was ranked by our families. They ranked us. That was a ranking by that. So we thank our families for that. But I honestly, Casey was being very nice and giving us credit, but Casey's leadership, and starting so far out, gave us a runway to really figure out what brands wanted. And, at the beginning, we signed Delta, and they came in and they've used the full term of their partnership. We've integrated with them, for example, Ed Bastian was giving out tickets at the Today Show Plaza, their CEO. We had a Top Chef challenge where we actually flew the contestants to Paris with Olympic athletes to be able to do a challenge in Paris. So they've been able to execute and take a sponsorship that wasn't just a sports sponsorship, to Casey's point. It's a really cultural phenomenon. We use the term there's red and blue, and then there's red, white, and blue, and that's what the Olympics are. And it brings us all together for that. And I think brands have had a longer runway to be able to do that. So I think that's what makes it a little bit unique.
Amazing. Anything to add, Casey?
Only thing I would add is, look, as the world gets more complicated for advertisers, creating a clear solution with definable results and the protections that they don't normally get in other things has proven to be incredibly valuable. And it's, I think in many ways, maybe the model you'll see going forward. Because if you're an advertiser, you just want a platform that understands that they're there to help you solve your problems or achieve your goals. And I think together what we have done is shown that you can do that when you bring media and sponsorship together in a unique way.
Amazing. Diana, now you played at a time when athletes were pretty much known by the games. And since then, we have social media, we have technology, we have all of the ways that viewing has gotten better. What do you think as an athlete? What do you think athletes need from tech and from the media platforms?
Yeah, I mean, I think both of us on this stage have seen technology just pretty much change our lives in so many ways. As an athlete, technology's changed the way you train, the way you recover, the way you rest. So as far as performance, the last 5 years of my life, which included the last 2 Olympics, was very different than my first 4 Olympics, where, you'd play the game, you go to the hotel, eat and go to bed, where, now with the technology, the stress, the load, what to do the next day. And I think that's changed the complexity of being an Olympic athlete in so many ways. And all that has made, I think, for a better game, better athletes. And we talked a little bit in the back, there's that fine line of how can technology help you, but at the same time, there's still that human component of hard work, of showing up, of grit, of communication with your teammates and people around you to make you the best athlete. And, on the flip side of that, the social media side of sports and technology has just taken off, and we've seen that in the last 4 years, especially like Casey was saying with Paris, where you, as a fan, experienced the Olympics in a completely different way. And I'm actually really excited for LA because I'll be a spectator, I'll be a fan, and I'm really excited to see the full feeling of what the Olympics are. When you're an athlete, you have your head down and you're just worried about your next game, your next practice, how do we get on that medal stand? So to take a step back now for LA and to be able to really experience Olympics in a different way, I'm excited, and I'll be right next to Casey everywhere he goes, right?
Well, I might
Every
say,
event, I'll be right with Casey. I'll be with Casey everywhere he goes.
I only have
And
two.
Mark.
I only have 2 things to add.
Okay.
If NBC's smart, they'll make sure you're broadcasting the Olympics. And number two, given your 6 gold medals, it's likely you may not be with me during opening ceremonies. You might be carrying that thing that has a flame on the end somewhere in that process, to be fair.
Let me start training now.
But the technology, it's interesting. Like you talk about, the last time we had the Summer Games was Atlanta, and NBC showed 171 hours of coverage. We'll show over 7,000 hours in LA. And the great part is you can either have Mike Tirico's silky voice talk to you highlights and the stories behind the stories, or you could program it on your own terms within Peacock and do whatever you want to do. So I think technology has democratized all of us, and we all get to be, Molly Solomon is the best executive producer of all time, but you also get to produce a little bit of your own work of what you want and what you want to watch when. And we'll all fall in love with curling again in a few weeks. But then we'll forget about it right after that.
And tell everybody I could do that.
I want to go back to you, Diana, in terms of technology's effect on the fan experience. How do you think that helps athletes develop a relationship as an athlete with their own fan base?
I mean, look, athlete and fan connection is what drives sports. When you know someone's story, you know what they've been through, you know all the sacrifices they've made, there's a connection to that athlete, to that sport, and you watch it. And the Olympics, I think, has a special flair to that when you don't hear from a curling athlete for 4 years, and then all of a sudden they're in this moment that you think they just woke up that day and picked up that curling stick, they call it? I don't know what they call it either.
Above my pay grade.
Yeah, but there's this connection that you have, and technology has just put that connection to where you can drive that experience wherever you want, and you have this access and the behind the scenes and the training, and and if you want to go deeper with the VR, you can literally be there without being there, and I think that's going to just take the Olympics to a different level.
That's awesome. In terms of your creative collective at the NBCU, how are they expanding on the reach?
Yeah, I mean, we had 300 million views through the Creator Connective. We also were smart enough to realize that not everyone wants to sit down and watch a full event at the Olympics. And so we started years ago working with the social platforms to figure out what content. And initially, because we're knuckleheads, we were like, well, we'll just put videos, we'll just do highlights But that's not what was resonating on TikTok and Instagram. So what we started to do was figure out how do we partner with the right creators to start send them over there. And again, like most people are never going to go to Milan. But you can experience Milan in a bunch of different ways, whether it is Mike Tirico, whether it's, Kylie Kelsey, whatever it might be, that'll be your own experience of what it is. And so it's, whatever you can do to give them that behind the scenes feel of it. And I think that's what social does a really good job of. So we'll continue to push that as we get through the year.
That sounds really interesting. And I love hearing that you evolved from the fact that highlights weren't doing well. Why do you think highlights were not doing well?
Well, highlights are fine, but that was not driving new users into the ecosystem. It was an Olympic fan who was already watching the Olympics, watching something that they did not see. What this was able to do was bring new people into the ecosystem and then drive them back to watch the Olympics on linear or Peacock or something else.
That's awesome. What a great insight. I love that. Diana, you played a sport for so long, a couple decades. I know.
Too long.
Not at all. But that is enviable, admirable, something that brands would absolutely love to have that level of relevance and high performance. What's your advice?
Well, to me, the one thing that always was in the forefront of my playing career was loyalty. I think when you're loyal to a team, a brand, I think you can go the extra step, and you really, in my case, I would train to exhaustion because I had so much respect and loyalty for whatever team I was playing, whether it was at Connecticut with the Phoenix Mercury, my overseas team, the U.S. national team. That sense of loyalty, I think, really resonates with people. And then after you get that loyalty, then obviously you have that connection for a long time. And, when you think of the Olympics, you think of NBC. And, that's the type of connection that people feel comfortable with. It'll keep coming back. So I think as a fan now and as an athlete, loyalty was the one thing that kind of always kept me on edge as an athlete, because I knew I was always playing for someone, that was on my side. And that always made a huge difference for me.
Oh, what a great advice and great lesson. And we say that both as marketers, brands care about creating a loyal base. And as advertisers, we want to create loyalty with our clients, which is, by the way, not as easy as it sounds. Casey, as marketers think about the Olympics, what is your advice for how they can balance like the big moments like the opening ceremony and then the much smaller moments where they can get a devoted and a focused audience?
Well, I think hurry up and be a sponsor, because you're going to get your sponsorship inventory and your media inventory designed for how you want. Look, I half joking aside, I think marketers, the challenge for the Olympics has always been for marketers is it pops up every 4 years. Outside the Diana Taurasis of the world, most of the athletes are unknown. They're maybe known for a couple of weeks, and then they can disappear again. So, and athletes and talent is such a big part of the lead up to these things, and there's no season to build. It's a very odd use case, and so what we've tried to do is make the engagement much simpler. So not just our partnership. As part of that, we created an athlete portal to help brands get to athletes directly, for the athletes to get monetized by the brands. Because look, the top athletes are always getting the deals because they're the obvious and sometimes the right answer. But in a lot of times, there's a lot of other athletes who you don't know they're a great story until the Olympics start, and then it's too late. So how do we make a lot of that more efficient and better to benefit the whole athlete cohort? Because in the end, the lead up to the games, during the games, and then a lot of times these people turn into stars, for a long time, based on the world we're in with creative outreach through social and media. They don't have to do their sport anymore, but they can use that sport as the launching board. So I think thinking about the Olympics in a broader sense and in a more cohesive sense is probably the best way to do that.
Love that. And I love the perspective in terms of a 4-year cycle. So it's a little difficult to build on the last one. So you're kind of starting over. It's great for us to think about that as marketers. Mark, in terms of the packages and what you learned from Paris, how are you sort of packaging up the prime time and the storytelling and the day parts in a way that is most advantageous? for
Well,
marketers?
I'll tell the story of so Molly Solomon, who's our executive producer. She before Paris, she said to me, hey, I'm thinking about doing something different with Snoop Dogg, and I was like, no, the Kevin Hart show. It's so good with Snoop. Like, don't do that. I was like, you don't know what you're doing, lady. And she's only won like 10,000 Emmys or something. But I felt like I needed to tell her she was wrong. It turns out she was right. And taking Snoop out and bringing him out as a correspondent was a really unbelievably brilliant. And she won a couple extra Emmys for that one as well. And I still have 0. But she is like, those are the insights that then we take that and we're like, Stanley Tucci, who is an expert and authentic for Italy, how do you actually integrate that into the telecast as well? Because, as Casey was talking about, when we had the games, that were in Asia, the great news was the clock was flipped, so it was all live sports. And again, if you listen to the consumers, that's what they said was, great, we saw live, but I didn't hear the stories of the athletes. And that's what we come to NBC for, is we want the stories to know the athletes. And so when you got back to Paris, we told those stories again. And so you'll see more of those stories that will come up. And, with Milan, like the fact that Lindsey Vonn at 41, is going to be competing. Super Bowl Sunday, before the pregame of the Super Bowl, Lindsey Vonn will be competing. That'll be an unbelievable moment for that.
That's amazing. Wow.
You got some time. Yeah. I mean, yeah. You get back out there.
2.5 years? Yeah. Get me a robotic Fitbit. You techies.
But Diana, you talked about an athlete and the discipline and the hard work, but it's also a team sport. So what's your advice to marketers and business leaders on how to play a high-performance game, but also play it as a team sport?
Yeah, I think that relationship between marketers and athletes, it's evolved so much in the last, 30, 40 years where with social media and those social platforms, I think athletes feel empowered to tell their stories the way they want them told. For a long time, you didn't really get much of a say, and I went through that period where, it was the early, 2000s, and you kind of just left it up to whoever wrote the check. You tell whatever story you want. Like, you didn't get much of a say in it. And now, with having a little bit more of that control, I think that genuine story between marketers and athletes, I think that's what really drives athletes. I think when it feels authentic of who they are. And at the same time, I think the consumer and the fan, they can smell bullshit, right? And I think that's sometimes the biggest hurdle, is when it is not authentic. It's hard to get those people back on board. And in a team sport, we see that with coaches and players and teammates. You like it when it's real and authentic. I think that's what really relates to people. And those partnerships that have evolved in the last 10 years, personally, are the really authentic ones, the ones that I believe in and they believe in you. And I think that's when you get, peak performance.
Well, and it's one of the things I was talking to brands about it as we're going through this process is, I think there's such an opportunity to get you and your multiple Olympic teams together. Like, you have a bond with those people that lasts forever. And you walking into the same room with them, I was like, there's a connection that you guys have that brands should latch onto, because you have that medal around your neck for the rest of your life with that team in particular. I think is a cool one.
I mean, the bond that we have will, it'll last forever. And we always walk into those Olympics and we're like, it does not matter what the name on the back of your jersey is. No one remembers that. No one remembers how many points you scored, how many rebounds, how many assists. Did you win or did you not win? And for us, that was always, the gold medal or bust, and, lucky enough to have 6.
Amazing.
No big deal.
No big deal.
No big deal. Easy. Casey, you've innovated so much of how the Olympic Games are going to be. What is the thing you want people to talk most about or remember after LA 28?
I would say a couple things. One, my hope is, just like it happened in '84, that the 30 days of the Olympics and Paralympics puts LA on a better course for the next 30 years. So did we leave the city better than we found it and set it in a new direction? And then the second thing is we have the opportunity in financial success to be one of the great legacies for American Olympic athletes for another generation at a time with what's going on in college sports, which is a whole other conversation. It's never been needed more. And so, you know, I want to leave the movement better than we found it in our country, and I want to leave the city better than we found it when we started this process. And if we do those two things, I think it'll be successful.
What a great vision and ambition. Love that. And as an Angelino, I really hope that is the case.
Touche.
But thank you all. What a joy. It was my absolute pleasure to spend the last 30 minutes with you. And I hear that the Olympic tickets go on sale.
Let's start registering January 14th for tickets.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Hey, guys.